your journey from a player. I think I saw you were a manager too.
Yeah.
Like you've done all these jobs to get where you're at. Can you speak a little to that journey and what it's like to be here now?
Yeah, I mean, when you look back on everything, you see how far you've come over the years. You realize just how special it is to be in the position you're at now. To be able to work with someone like Coach Wade, be able to be an assistant in one of the top, conferences in college basketball.
Yeah.
This is when you sit back and you say, you know what, it was all worth it. Like you said, it's some long hours, but you also understand when you sign up for this job, that's kind of what it consists of. Especially when you work with someone like Coach Wade, as passionate as he is, as competitive as he is, that comes along with it, and I think it's really helped shape me as a coach.
And you guys were at Clemson at the same time together.
Yes.
What? No, you were a player.
Mhm.
He was what, just purely a student, or
So he started off as a student manager,
okay?
and then he transitioned into the director of basketball operations by the time I was a senior.
Okay.
And then, obviously, that's where his coaching journey began. After that, heading over to Harvard, then getting to Chattanooga at ECU. But just to see coaches grow, I've known him since he was a student at Clemson, and
Yeah.
see him now as a big time, Power Four, head basketball coach. That's the dream.
How's your guys' relationship? How did it start, and how has it kind of grown? As obviously you kind of follow him around.
One thing that stayed consistent with Coach Wade is his work ethic. I remember coming in as a freshman, him being one of the first guys there, to the gym, helping set up for practice, making sure that we were organized going into practice. So I think for me, just kind of me being able to be the person I am. He understood and knew me, like, hey, Vernon's gonna work hard, he's gonna do what he needs to do. So then when it was time when I was retired, to transition into coaching, he was like, hey, I know what I'm gonna get with him as well. I get someone who works hard, someone who's a student of the game, someone who loves it. So I think that's kind of where the stars aligned for us.
The ACC has changed a lot since you left. What is it like kind of seeing the new ACC?
I was just thinking about that, earlier today, and I think someone like Coach Wade coming back into the conference and bringing a lot of excitement, bringing some highly recruited players, it's going to draw even more attention, back to the program. And I think the ACC is competitive. Obviously there's some teams at the top that stand out a little bit more than others, but I think that balance within the conference is there. I think that we'll be bringing a new style of play, a new dynamic, and I think it'll be very competitive.
How has Copeland and Breed kind of helped make the other players understand what is about to happen?
It's great because now you have guys who've been through it. A couple of other guys are like, man, I'm so sore. These hours are a little different. And Copeland and Breed are like, hey, this is what we did every day, for 4 months leading up to the season. So they help you get up to speed faster. So you understand the importance of being able to retain some guys, from your previous roster because that way the offense comes to them more naturally. What we're trying to do defensively, our concepts, all those things they pick up and they can help guys. So you got two other coaches on the floor in a way.
What was it like for you to play Clemson? And what was your phone like the next 24 hours afterwards?
I sat outside the locker room and I was a little emotional just because, just trying to take it all in. And, I really just beat my former, school, in an upset in the NCAA tournament. So it took a little while for it to sink in. And then by the time I got back to my phone, I had over 100 text messages just by people who just couldn't believe that, one, we had pulled it off, but, two, it was against my former school.
Who was someone from Clemson that it hit home when you got their message or call?
Well, James Mays, who was actually from Raleigh.
Yep,
He was
Garner.
before man Gardner. Yeah, no, he was like, Vern, I'm so happy for you, man. And then he had kind of heard about some of the rumors from NC State floating around. So then it was like, well, I hope you guys come to state. So, at that time, it was just, it was a great feeling. Coach Brown, with the Sacramento Kings last year, he reached out to me. He just told me Vern, that was huge for the program. We were just really happy about it.
What's it been like building this roster almost from scratch? And is there anybody in particular that you had a strong hand in getting to come here?
Collectively as a staff, we met, every day, throughout the summer. The moment Coach got the job, things did not slow down. We kind of had an idea of who we really wanted to go get. Someone for me, I thought Trey Holloman is someone special guard. I think that he hasn't been fully unleashed. I think at Michigan State, he was kind of in a role in which he had to be a role player, play off the ball, fill the wings. And I think he's a lot more talented than what people realize. And I think you'll see something special from him. And, being a guard, we have a very close relationship. So I'm really excited for him. He was someone in recruiting that I really wanted to make sure he signed.
Wade obviously has a pretty big, just kind of the way he carries himself. He's the agitator, you know. Like is that kind of what you're selling out there to guys to get them to come here? Hey, let's just be disruptive.
Yeah, I mean, I think guys want to play for a coach who's passionate, one who's not going to back down from anyone. And, it tends to be the kind of players that he's recruited over the years. He wants tough kids. That when you're in a fire, when you're at a Carolina or at a Duke, who are like, this is the moment this is why I signed up to come to NC State. And these are guys that love basketball. A lot of their similarities are in line with coaches.